Every year Porsche comes out with a car, they introduce an intro book to introduce that book, and they go back to the 60s. Sorry guys, but we use all of this stuff, so the guys don't always put it back right or whatever. But if you go back to early on, 7914, there's 68 911, that's another 914. Here's a, I don't want to, 69 911. But all of the things that are new for that car, they'll introduce. And these to me are like the Bible. People, yes, the workshop manuals are nice, and actually there are no workshop manuals after 05, they're all virtual. And we've got a whole library of virtual. But these to me are key because they tell you what's new. And if you remember what came out those years, you can go back and learn about that system because they will never explain it in these manuals. Andy's like, Tony, I need help. This is a new buyer's guide, and if you could please just get me all of these thought bubbles back here on all of these on what goes wrong with the cars. Well, that's...
And I saw the car spent almost 2.5 to 3 years here, and I couldn't figure out what else you could do except polish the mirror. You know what I mean?
That's a good question.
I just want you to show me how to drive my car when we get it ready.
Absolutely. I was told that we're going to do that. What I like to do is turn the key on, and I want you to listen to, you hear that?
Yeah.
Then you start it, always pushing the clutch. You don't have to with these cars, but Porsche recommends that you push in the clutch when you do start them. What that does is it separates the engine from the gearbox, and that way the starter doesn't have to turn over just it only has to turn over the engine, not the transmission, because what you're trying to do is make it easier on the starter. So when I go to take off, I always use Galenda, like low gear. Don't put any pressure on low gear. Use G, but don't take off and don't put any load on it. I know we have the cover for the fuse panel out because we're looking at things. I don't like to rev a car above 3,000 RPM until we get to engine temperature, and plus especially low load, because you can keep it under 3. Like when I turn this corner, I can shift it into third and floor it, and it'll stay under 3,000 RPM, but that's lugging the engine. I don't want to lug the engine. So we've got our friendly Mr. Police Officer over there while he's looking for us coming through here. So let's start with the gauges.
Yes.
These two are called combi gauges, you know, K-O-M-B-I. Porsche kind of started that whole combi name with the gauges. We have our fuel level. I like to get it to where, and let me tell you, it's a little unusual, and these are like Tonyisms, but what I like to do is get it to where the low level light comes on and then fill it up. I'm going to go get some fuel right now. In fact, I didn't bring my wallet. Do you have any?
Oh no,
that's that famous. I didn't bring my wallet thing to dinner,
that's
right?
That's not dinner.
Yeah.
What fuel are you
Only
using?
Supreme Fuel, high test. So if you can get 92 or 3, that'd be great.
Using non-ethanol or?
Non-ethanol would be the best if you can.
Non-ethanol 91.
I don't think that's possible out here.
We have that in Idaho.
Oh, that'd be the best.
Okay.
You don't really want alcohol if you can help it. Alcohol is not easy on the injector pintles, the little pintle in the middle of the injector, because it has less lubrication than standard fuel, and it'll cause the pintle to stick. So I personally like to get it to where I fill it up, and then I get it to where low level comes on, and I fill it up at low level. And people say, well, I never like to get it below 1/4 of a tank. My rationale, my thinking is when you get it down below 1/4 of a tank, the fuel's moving a lot and it picks up sediment in the tank.
Yes.
And if you do that more often, you're going to pick up sediment in the tank. Look, could I be splitting hairs? Yes. Are we splitting hairs by owning a car like this? Yes. So you want to treat it right. For me, high test, no alcohol if possible, no ethanol, and then only from a major brand like Shell, Chevron.
Yes.
Those two are my favorite. Well, I use Exxon, Mobil, Texaco, BP, yes. but I would prefer Shell, Shell and Chevron. Those are the two that I like. And try to get it down to where the light comes on and then you fill it up and the light comes on, because that way also you know the system's working, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so that's and the low level light. By the way, the reserve in this car where the light comes on is about 2 gallons of fuel. They designed that around Le Mans, where when the driver had to go to reserve, he could make it 1 lap around Le Mans.
I see.
Okay, we have a coolant level light and we have an overheating light. The confusing thing about this is the level light is much larger than the overheating light, which doesn't make sense. The overheating light is the top of the gauge, the
so the 140
coolant temperature gauge.
So going above 140
C. Well,
so
actually,
okay.
I don't like to go above 110, really.
Okay, that's C.
100 to 110 C, yes.
Okay.
Because that's pretty hot as it is, right?
Yep.
As you notice at a stoplight, I have the clutch out.
Yes.
And that way I'm not running on the
saving a
throw-up bearing. Yeah. So, low level light, sorry.
Are these carbon fiber bearing throw-outs?
No, these are standard clutches, which is better that way.
Okay.
What I tried to do for a lot of the earlier cars, a lot of the cars that I did early on, was find, this isn't really proper for the internet, but it's find the true asbestos clutches. I know you don't want to hear that, but those were thicker in the proper dimensions. So, coolant temperature starting to come up. I'd rather you not push it until you're in at about 90 degrees C at least, if not operating temperature, between 90 and 100. Now let's move over to oil temperature. Most of the time, again, you're going to run around 90 to 100 degrees C. Can you go to 120? Yes. I don't want to see you go much higher. Normally, you're going to get, and keep in mind that engine oil breaks down at around 300 degrees Fahrenheit. So you don't want to do that. Even though synthetics are in there, you don't want to do it. And a lot of people say, why am I changing the oil more often even though I'm running synthetic? You're changing the oil not because it breaks down. Synthetics don't break down as easy. But, sorry. But,
you can shoot that.
Yeah, it's okay. Synthetics don't break down as easy, but they get contaminated as easy as standard
from picking up
oil,
just dirt and everything.
Combustion products, carbon, dirt, water, things like that. So the air pressures in the tires say to put in 44 in the front pounds per square inch and 51 in the back. I personally, if I were you, think about where to put all this. I'd put it 50 all the way around. And what Porsche says to do is put them at those, and then if the lights are on, go up roughly 5 pound increments.
Okay.
If you get these warning lights on, that's usually what it is, that they're a little low on pressure.
System?
Well, these are the air pressures.
Okay.
See the little air pump in the middle?
I see it.
That's the air pump, air pressure. And watch how they'll go out. See that?
Yes.
So if they're on or blinking, you'll know you have a problem, and I want you to either call me or try to put in at least 50 in each tire.
And see if that does it.
It should be fine. They're bulletproof systems. Okay, so
the whole car seems rather, it's complex, but
it's not that, it's not as complex as everybody.
But pretty bulletproof.
They are. They're, I hate to say, oh, you're filming. Okay, first gear, we're up to temp pretty much. That's just first, right? And I don't want to get into a situation where I have to stop quickly. Okay, steering wheel's just a touch off to the left right now, so we'll have to look at that and see if we have a crown issue with the road or what. So we've discussed oil temperature and where oil breaks down at roughly 300 degrees F. I like to not go over 250 degrees F. Right now at 90, we're at roughly 100's 212. So, you know, if we're at
so we're good.
195 or something.
Okay.
This is our generator light, also connected to a belt. This is our central informer, and this is our oil pressure. So these two lights should come on when you turn on the key and go out fairly quickly when you start the car.
What oil pressure does it usually?
At idle, I like to see 1.5 bars.
Okay.
We'll check that out. A lot of engines run down about 1 bar, which is around 15 pounds, 14.7. But let's see what our oil pressure is at idle. If I'm above 1.5 bars, I'm happy.
Okay.
If I'm 1.5 bars or higher. If I'm at 1 bar, I'm okay. Right now we're at about 1.7, 1.8.
Okay.
You can kind of see where we're at there with we're just under 2 bar.
Then is 60 pounds kind of normal?
If I'm above 1 bar, which is 15 pounds, I'm pretty happy.
Okay.
If I'm okay. If I'm at 1.5, which is 722 pounds roughly, I'm very happy. Okay. So we're exceeding that.
Good.
The bearings, as bearings wear, they release oil. They allow pressure to release, right? Because if you have a shaft inside something turning and those gaps get larger,
yes,
oil's going to escape.
Yes.
Pressure is nothing more than resistance to flow. So when you have lower pressure, the bearings are worn more. Greg, when I was rebuilding the engine, Greg told me, I told him, I said, hey, look, I have some pitting on the camshafts. I can have somebody rebuild the cams. I have a crankshaft issue, which I don't think I've ever seen. Somebody ran a pulley loose.
Yeah, we read that in your write-up, yes.
And I'm like...
And we have the old crankshaft, by the way.
I gave him all the parts.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, Greg, I can try to have a machinist fix it, but the hardening on the crank may not be the same. Greg's like, get a new crank, get new camshafts, take no chances on anything. And I gotta tell you, between those, between the cams and the crank, those were like 40 grand or something. And he's selling the car, and he wanted to do it. So he's a stand-up person.
I
really
hope to
think
meet him someday.
So we've discussed these two gauges. Are you good with those?
Very good. Yes.
Okay, good. Now we're into the tachometer. Again, when you start an engine, any car, when it's 40 degrees F or above roughly, I would take off immediately, but keep it under 3,000 RPM. If it's below 35 or 40, I'd like you to let it warm up for just a few minutes.
Okay.
5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes.
Just to get the oil going.
Just to make sure you're not pushing it when it's too cold. But 40 degrees or above F, I'd like you to take off immediately and keep it under 3,000 RPM. When it does warm up, I'd like you to keep it above 3 and between 3 and 5. Don't shift below 3, okay? This is our boost gauge, same in bar, right?
Okay, so one turbo or both turbos?
They're not parallel.
Yes.
They're sequential. So you're going to get one, then the other. So really, that's a trick question. You'll get the other one in later. You can watch the gauge. Once every time you drive it, when it's got plenty of oil and it's at operating temperature, I would like to see you get to red line. Now, you can do it. Don't do it in G, right? Because you don't want to be pushing G. But in first, I would do it. Second, you can do it if you have
enough road space,
enough room to go.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. So tachometer, we've discussed that. I'm going to do that once. We have a high beam indicator here. Speedo, there's not much to say. You have a trip meter. Now, people have argued with me about this, but it's so easy to do it. It's like whether you believe in global warming or not, do what you can to keep it from happening, right? Well, same here. Whether you believe or not that this can hurt, just wait till the cars stop before you reset the trip meter, because if things are turning, it can break the plastic gears.
Okay.
Mileage. This is an intermittent wiper. If you move this switch, well, usually down, it will put it into intermittent mode, and this will control the interval, right?
Okay.
I didn't think it was going to go there for a minute. That's why I was wondering. That's off. 1, 2, and 3 speeds. Horizontal is off. Down is intermittent. And this controls the time interval. We have a recirculate button, and we have a defrost button here. Okay. So the defrost is a one-touch button that should set air conditioning up here. Now realize that the Germans always used the Germans always use heater for defrost. The domestics use air conditioning for defrost. So I just want you to understand, when you use that, you should be getting warm air, generally speaking, but we'd have to check that system. These slider vents you're going to get air out of the center vents mainly, but if you move this over, you will still get it out of the center vent, but you're going to be getting some by the windscreen also. And by the way, this is not a genuine, this is maybe a genuine Porsche, but it's not a 959 windshield. You can't find them anymore. And the factory's looking for them, and they're putting this windshield in. So don't feel like that, you know, this is terrible that you have a 959 with this windshield. This is what Porsche puts in at the factory. They contacted me looking for it. I'm like, really, me? And again, now we have our, really what I call transverse lock or front to rear bias, right? As far as power. And if you look at the little dark shaded in areas, see how this, let's go this way. See how this is for the rear axle and this is for the front axle? That's what the shaded areas indicate. This gauge is for the rear, for the front axle. This is for the rear. And for more detailed information, we can look in the owner's manual.
So that tells you what your power split is.
Yes, exactly. And that's where we can also, that's why it changes it when you go to wet or icy conditions.
Okay.
I don't think I would drive it in the snow or the ice, but that's up to you guys. I don't think I'd want to push this system to that, even though it's probably good
more
for
than
it.
capable.
Yeah, more than capable.
Well, speaking of Dakar.
Yeah, exactly. And the 961s
Right.
and the race version of them. Okay, in our center console, and obviously you have temperature control, which is, if you want more here for your fan down below or temperature control. Clock adjustment's very simple. You can go from 12 to 24 time, what do you call it? Time readout or whatever you want to call it. Hazard, rear window defroster, mirrors. And then we haven't discussed our shock dampening and how much dampening you'll get. That's our central locks.
Okay.
So height control we've talked about.
Yes.
And I like to do that if I'm going to be going through a dip or around speed bump or something.
Otherwise, you keep it right in the
I
center?
usually keep it down on the lowest, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Because it's going to lower, well, it'll lower the car anyway. If you want to put it in the medium, you can, but I like the lowest mode unless I'm going to be going through something. Now, as far as dampening control, stiffest is the plus, okay? Negative is the softest.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I usually keep it in the middle position. If I'm going to be going faster speeds, I put it in the stiffer position to have better shock control. So, what other questions do you guys have? Obviously, there's a couple of on the stocks here. If your headlights are on and you push forward on this stock, you're going to activate the headlight washers.
Oh.
Okay? And then back is cleaning the windscreen.
Okay. And so for bright lights, is it a switch?
Bright lights is here with the high beams.
Okay.
Forward is high beam, back is low
Okay,
beams.
so just manual.
Turn signal,
Okay.
yes, all manual. I love the analog aspects of this car. Oh, let's talk about these here for a moment. We have,
That's the ABS light on
yes,
top.
we have our ABS. We have our parking brake, as you can see on the right
I see
side.
it.
And
Yes.
then we have our sensor warning light, which is, by the way, a standard symbol.
And what is that?
Tells you if the brake pads are getting low.
Okay.
This is our warning, our audible warning.
I'm impressed with the systems. Now that the sequential turbo kicks in at what RPM?
Fairly late, doesn't it?
5,000,
Yes.
4,000?
Well, yeah, it's fairly late.
Okay.
That's what gets people in trouble, is
Yeah.
where they're on
Boom.
a slight turn like this.
Yeah.
You see, we would be going through here
Lose it.
full gas, and then it would come on, and it just, this doesn't have the slip control like the modern cars, so be careful. It's a pretty warm day today, isn't it?
Very
Nice.
And our temperatures are holding up fine.
Not bad.
So for Oil is usually Gibbs Racing.
Okay, that's a good question. Stay away from a lot of the well-known brands because they don't have ZDDP. ZDDP
Okay, yep.
is zinc
You
and
want that,
phosphorus.
yep.
And those are like high pressure additives for the cams,
Yeah.
mainly for the cams.
We use those in our 356s after we've had them totally rebuilt.
Brad Penn is a good oil. Motul has a good oil. Joe Gibbs Driven is a good oil. You got to be careful, guys, because you can come across like Mobil 1. People think it's the best there is.
It's
not any
It's
longer.
not.
No.
It's not like it used to be.
How about coolant? Because
Coolant,
part is
good
water
question.
cooled and part is air cooled.
That's a good question.
The heads are water
Heads are
cooled.
water cooled. The central part of the engine is a Mesger based air cooled engine along with the cylinders, but the heads themselves are water cooled. So what I like to do is I'm the only independent instructor in Canada and USA for Porsches. I teach shops about things, and I ask them, I say, what's the best cooling medium for the engine? And they think coolant. People think coolant, right? Well, believe it or not, it's water. Water is the best thing to cool an engine. But unfortunately, we have corrosion, we have cold temperatures, and we need lubrication for the coolant pump, or pumps in this case. So what you want to do is, and what I've done in my race cars, and this car is a little different because it's a street car, is you want to run, in this case, I would run a 50-50 mixture, maybe a 60-40, where you run 60% water. You're going to want to run that coolant, the factory coolant, because it, again, the lubrication of the water pump, the antifreeze and anti-corrosion characteristics.
So no special brand, anything?
I'll use Porsche.
Porsche. Okay.
I've also used water wetter, but when I'm using factory coolant or any sort of coolant, I don't go to the water wetter because it's not necessary.
Okay.
In the race cars, when we ran Le Mans and the like, I would run water with 2 liters of coolant and 2 bottles of water wetter. But since we're running 40 to 50% coolant, I would say don't worry about the water wetter. It's from Redline Products. Good question. So
brake fluid, anything special on that?
that's a good question. Also, I like to run. I've got a little bit of thumping in the clutches for the forward drive, but most all of them do it. Just in the future, what I would do is probably service the fluid again to see. But there are some clutches for the forward drive for the front differential, and when they start to clunk like that, we just kind of want to keep an eye on it. Feel that little bit of clunking?
Yes. Is that a fine tuning, or do you think fluid, or?
I'd probably change the fluid to another brand and try something else, and keep an eye on those. So we covered oil, same lubricants, same with the gearbox, front diff. Most people overfill the front diffs in these cars because everybody fills to a fill line, to a fill hole, and that's the opposite of what you want to do with these. You don't want to fill to a fill hole. Porsche says to go 35 or 36 millimeters below the fill hole, which is very unusual.
That is unusual.
Or it will blow it all out, by the way, and there will be oil everywhere in the front. Now, you had a question about, you were asking about how to help that. I think we covered that, but if there's something I'm not answering, let me know. As far as annual maintenance, I would recommend changing all the fluids annually. Coolant, because it gets acetic. Not so much antifreeze characteristics, that's easy to keep. But engine oil, gearbox, front diff, brake fluid, those are the things. I would do those annually when a car sits.
Is there just one oil filter in the engine?
There's only one oil filter on the engine. It's just not easy to get to. There's panels underneath the car that you want to take off, and then there's the filter, which is difficult to get out. See how I'm taking it easy in the G, in the off-road gear? It's critical that you don't push it in the off-road gear. I mean, it's a good idea to keep up with the servicing.
And as far as driving the car to keep it maintained, any minimum number of miles or?
You know what? I don't have a minimum number for you, but I would recommend drive. Okay, this is important. Obviously, you want to drive the car at least once a month if possible, right? And another key thing, this is what's important. When you do start the engine, drive it and get it to operating temperature.
Yes,
because
just don't start it up and shut it off.
Don't start it up,
Right.
let it idle, and don't turn it off too quickly.
Within the engine.
You want to burn all the moisture out of the oil, and the only way to do that is to get it to operating temperature. Look at the low level lights on. I didn't put a whole lot of fuel in it. You want to boil all the water off in the oil.
Yes.
Oil company there. Feel the second one come in.
Yeah.
I think this car has a power kit. Because
really?
of a number of things. First of all, because of the power, and second of all, because of the, I believe, and it's by memory, and again, we have like a 25 of them we service, but I think it's because of, there's a fault you get in the computer, in the main engine computer, the boost computer, that you get, and it means an unknown is what it means. And I think when we get that, and there aren't a lot of people that know this, that means that I think it has a boost kit. Now that's red line. So do that in first or second gear, getting onto a freeway, like an on-ramp, something nice and wide open.
Well, if it has a power kit, is that similar to the Metzger XP kits?
The X51 and X50, is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for grabbing that.
So that would put this horsepower well above the...
well, they're normally 500 to 600 depending on the cars, right? So I have to look it up again to see what stock horsepower is, do you know?
450, I think.
Yeah.
Without the XP.
No, they actually came out with the X numbers later. But with these, they called them power kits, special wish items.
So this is probably running around the 500 level then.
It's a good question. Without a dyno, and that's difficult because it's all-wheel drive, right?
It's hard to dyno this.
I don't think I would take a chance and do that.
I wouldn't.
It's not worth getting the number.
Yeah, it's not that important. Beautiful driving car.
And we also, it also ended up with a problem with the muffler.
I read all about that.
Oh, man.
And how you tried to salvage the other one.
We took the skin off and tried to rebuild the muffler, and something happened internal to the muffler where it was causing power problems.
Wow. This is an extremely fast car. It's so amazing to me that these cars were made in the middle to later 80s.
Isn't it interesting that it really needs something like an Autobahn? Did you notice that?
Yeah.
How I've cruised them at about 100, 130, and they love it. I stand behind what I've done. So regardless of who owned the car, we did the work. And if something, if there's an oil leak with the engine, or if there's something like that that pertains to what we did, I want to make sure that we stand behind it. So.